Hey everybody, it's me again, Miss Guzman, and this is another episode of Inside My Classroom. As many of you may know, if you've been watching my video series or keeping up with me, I have transitioned to a new job. I am now the gifted and talented specialist at one of the middle schools in my district. So aside from helping the other teachers who have gifted and talented students come up with activities for their classroom, I also have an English language arts classroom that is all 6th grade gifted and talented students. So today I'm going to talk about an ELA strategy. Well, this is a strategy you could use in any class, but it was one that I tried in my ELA class, and so I wanted to kind of go over it and talk about what that strategy looked like and what I did. So one of the things we try to do with our GT students is to have them think from multiple perspectives. So they're looking at the world through other people's lenses. One of the ways we do that is through ologists or through ologies, like the study of something, or the scientist who is the studier of, okay? So I give my students a little handout, or I did this last time for this activity, and I talked about ologies and what they are. It's kind of studying something or a branch of knowledge. And then I told them that their objective was to think about the novel that they're studying, and we happen to be studying a novel called Homeless Bird by Gloria Whelan, from the perspective of those ologists. Now for this particular assignment, I chose the ologist for them. I wouldn't always choose the ologist, but this is their first time doing this activity, so I wanted to kind of focus in on things that were going to have a connection to the book, and I picked the one that didn't have a connection to the book very well. It was a real big reach for them to choose what was going on in the novel that had to do with the biologist. So I picked 3. The cultural anthropologist, because they study culture, and this is about a young woman in India, an arranged marriage, and being a widow in India, and some of the things that happen. I picked the thanatologist because there are a lot of references to death in this book and some of the rituals that go along with that, and that's what a thanatologist studies. I picked a hydrologist who studies water because they have rituals around the Ganges River, and we did some other studying about the Ganges River, so they talked about that. And then the 4th one I chose was the biologist. The biologist was the one that was a stretch. Biologists study living things, so there are living people in this book. There is a part in the book where the main character picks some flowers from a tree, from a mango tree, to give to someone, and so we kind of talked about what the impact was to like the food supply, or what it may have been to the mango tree itself. So that was kind of the connection that we made with the biologist, and they needed help making that connection, making that deeper connection. They could make kind of a basic connection of, yes, there are people and there's some animals that they talk about a little bit in this book, and a biologist might study the life of those. So that was what I gave them, was those 4 ologists. So first of all, they have to tell me what the ologist studies. So that's just a simple, very simple look up, find out what the ologist studies, so that then you can think from that perspective. Then they had to tell me how the ologist would look at the novel. Like, what is it that they would be looking for in the novel? So if you're the hydrologist, what are you looking for in the novel? You're looking for water, you're looking for water sources, you may be looking for how the water is carried, how the water may be polluted, things like that. Then the second question they had to answer was, what would the novel mean to them? So if I were inside the novel, if I was a scientist inside the novel, what would it mean to me? Would it be useful to me? So for example, for the biologist, it's not super useful to them because it doesn't really talk about the living organisms or too much about them. And for the hydrologist, it does some talk about it, but we actually loaded the information more on the outside, and we talked a little bit more about cremations and some of the things that happen in the Ganges River and some of the bathing and the sick people. They talk about it a little bit. So the hydrologist was some. The cultural anthropologist would, of course, have a lot to learn about from the cultures and the customs and the rituals that we talk about in the book. And so then they had to talk about how would they use Homeless Bird in their studies. Would they go and watch the rituals? Would they just listen to the stories from them? Maybe if they're the hydrologist, are they going to go and test the Ganges River to see what the pollutants are like, or to see what the water quality is like? Would they test the drinking water? If it's the thanologist, what are they doing? So they answered these 3 questions. Then I asked them to create either a brochure or a wanted poster asking the book to come and help these ologists in their field of study. So one of my students and her partner, I did this in partners, made this giant wanted poster. So I wanted y'all to kind of see what the end result was. So here for like phenology, homeless bird was wanted, and then they did a symbol for death, different aspects of death and death rituals. And then they chose the marigolds because they used the marigolds, and there is some inferencing in the book that's tied around the marigolds. So if you had read the marigolds, read Homeless Bird with your students, you would know the significance. So the students read Homeless Bird and they knew the significance of marigolds as far as it goes with the death rituals. For this one, for the cultural anthropologist, Homeless Bird, and here's the women getting ready for a wedding, beliefs, practices, values, ideas, technologies, and traditions. And this one, they talked about arranged marriage. The spelling is not great, but they're 6th graders and we work on it. So they knew that there was arranged marriage in the book, that was a tradition and a ritual that the anthropologist would want to go. Again, the hydrologist, this is the river, and so they knew that this was quality and movement of water, and that they were asking for the Ganges River to come and help them to study this. And for the biologist, it was living organisms, growth, evolution, and they did some cells here. And then at the bottom, they picked that mango tree. This was the one that I had to help them with the most. They had the hardest time making that connection. And I didn't specifically tell them because that's terrible, but I led them to kind of make a list of what the living things were that they saw. I said, don't forget, plants, animals, people are all living things. And so then they started making a list. And then we kind of ended up having a group discussion about, well, the mango tree is really the only plant that we see. What do we see about that? Oh, she tears some flowers off of it. Okay, what do you think might happen? Why were they mad at her for taking the flowers off? Could it affect how much fruit it has next year because they're counting on this for a food supply for the family? So we had that classroom discussion. They made that connection a little bit better. So I thought that this was a really great project. I used to be a science teacher. I said I'm a science teacher in here. No, I like teaching ELA too. So doing the ologist was a very easy. In science, it was very easy to make those scientific connections. This was a little more difficult for the kids to grasp, but once they grasped it, they really enjoyed it. And actually some of my advisory kids saw it and really liked it, and they wanted to do it too. So I sent that project over to their teacher so that they could do it in their classroom as well. So I hope that your students like it as much as mine did and as much as my advisory students like it. You can definitely try it out. I'm going to put it up on my blog soon with instructions. So if you'd like to try out the ologies project, come and check me out. My blog is still Science in the Middle at Blogspot, but hey, ologists are scientists, right? So thank you so much for watching my video. This is a little bit inside my classroom. I'm Miss Guzman.